September 2019. This week, the party discussed investing in the hobby, the accoutrements and accessories that can make your games better and prove you're one of the patricians of gaming. The adventuring party, discussing tabletop and related gaming and the Irish gaming scene, so you don't have to.
Welcome to the party. I'm Mary.
I'm Savage.
And with us this week we have a reasonably special guest, Jude.
Hello. Hello, Jude.
So as we approach the wondersome, inverted commas, festive time of the year, when one is wont to get shiny gifts of board games and the like, we thought we'd talk to you about investing in the hobby.
Yes, we think we've got our timing down. So we should be listening to this around the start of December. And of course that is always a good time of year to consider meaty purchases.
We're definitely coming to you live and in your living room.
We have a fairly good handle on when this madness happens. Investing in your hobby, that's a pretty broad topic, and we've kind of broken it down a little bit. But we're framing it in the idea that we're now into the gift-giving season. Mm-hmm. So you might think about the gamers in your life who require a gift.
Deserve a gift.
Or maybe you yourself have been a very good boy or girl, or anything in between, and deserve to treat yourself. So let's think about the different ways that we can invest in our hobby, and how we might be a little bit extra as we head into the end of the year.
We're so down with the kids.
Of course, the first question, I think it's important to point out that you don't have to spend a lot of money to have a good time in the hobby of gaming.
That is true.
With some exception. I mean, I think you might sort of have to stretch your definition of fun to get very far in a war game or a CCG with just the basic starter, but even starters have gotten a lot better these days.
I can see Jude's face going, Keyforged. Keyforged, not a CCG.
Keyforged. No, it's not. But even war games companies are providing things like Warhammer Underworlds, which is quite a low buy-in for a smaller skirmish game.
Now explain that one for our listeners.
Well, very simply, it's played across two small boards that are placed together. Each player brings one team. The teams can be bought in a single box for 20 to 25 euros. They come with cards. You can always get more teams and swap their cards about and deck build to a certain degree. But ultimately, you can play the entire game off the 40 euro box set, including competitively if you want. It mightn't be as great.
But we're really talking about what happens when you decide to go the extra mile and put a little bit more money behind whatever your chosen sort of area of gaming is.
Yeah, because buying a whole game for somebody can be quite challenging, because financially it can be quite expensive, or because you don't know what they already have, or you don't know what they already like, or you think, well, they've already got all the board games they can play. There's no point in getting another board game, but maybe I can get them something to go with it, or to go with their board game. The accoutrement of gaming.
So it's the ancillary stuff. It's the stuff that makes life just a little bit easier.
Yeah, just a little more shiny.
Yeah, so rather than getting another, D&D book or another board game, you get, things that make what the person has into a, deeper, maybe shinier version of what it is.
A nice set of ivory dice or a
big bottle of vodka.
I'm a big fan of neoprene playmats.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And some of those have gotten beautiful. I see they're starting to roll those out for wargaming at 6x4 feet, that you can get beautiful, fully 3D printed, 3D effects. Oh, I'll put a link in the show notes, and Mary just gonna have to.
What, Savage?
Just gonna have to eat her words when she sees the wonder that is a properly 3D modelled and then rendered terrain.
I'm looking forward to my delicious words.
They're rather good. Beasts of War covered a few of them not so long ago. They did a very good rundown of some of the really nice printed battle mats. And that's just one example of something you could spend that doesn't necessarily mean the game plays any differently. Your war game is still played on your table or whatever, but it does look a bit more stunning when it's got a full rubble battlefield instead of just a few bits and pieces you might have made yourself or bought. Obviously, there's lots of other things. So, I mean, you can also think about how you might spend a little money to protect an investment. There's so many different things you can spend, or you can acquire now, especially in the board game space, that allow you to organise apart from IKEA shelving, of course, which is the
Kallax.
classic.
We love you.
The classic investment of any serious board gamer.
But yes, even small minor purchases like card sleeves. I mean, card sleeves are something that if you play a game a lot, and even ignoring CCGs here, but just your board game, or like deck builder, like Dominion, if you play it a lot, it's going to get grubby, cards are going to get marked. A simple set of card sleeves that will set you back €5 or €6 will help that game last a lot longer, make shuffling easier, and protect what you've already invested in the game, I suppose. So
You mentioned before we started recording that this was actually something of an annual stocking stuffer for you.
yes, well, we do acquire these games at rather an alarming rate, so we regularly get gifted card sleeves, and I'm regularly grateful for those sleeves. Please don't stop purchasing from them.
He's always grateful. It's the annual socks of the gamer world.
Absolutely,
Instead of getting socks for Christmas,
Actually, yeah.
the obligatory card sleeves in a selection of sizes.
Yeah, make sure you get the right sizes,
they're
folks.
like body socks.
Just get all
but
the sizes.
For cards.
They're like what?
Body socks, but for cards. I don't know what I'm talking
No,
about.
of course.
Wow. Yeah, you made that much clearer than just saying card sleeves. That was really good.
In case anyone needed a vivid image of what a card sleeve was, it's a body sock, but for
For a card.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'll never stop saying that.
We're still age appropriate.
We're still age appropriate.
Right, okay, let's go on. Of course, if you do sleeve up all the cards in a board game, you then have another problem, is how to pack it all away. And of course, there are now lots of options that you can explore. There's lots of these sort of MDF, laser cut, or foam insert.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Broken Token, for instance, are a company that lead the way in providing inserts for popular board games.
For the big ones,
Yeah.
the Arkham Horrors and
that
the
sort of stuff, yeah.
Descent, that one. That's a board game, right?
It is a
from
board
ways
game
back.
from 900 years ago.
I think I was thinking of Gloomhaven, actually. It can be quite a challenge to get everything back in the box when you finally do get it unpacked.
Yeah, or when you get a lot of games that just come with such a bare box. Like, at least some of them have a little bit of structure inside the box when you open them up. There's a little bit of spacing to put things in to make it somewhat easier. But so many of them are basically just a big empty shell.
Here's some baggies.
Yeah, and then everything just falls about like chaos. New word. Everything falls about like chaos or crazy. I don't know. So having things like those inserts makes a massive difference.
And I think the thing it does in terms of how you're investing is it protects the components again, and it makes it so much easier to play the game. Especially when you've got lots of chits and tokens and cards that need to be organised, that you can simply lift it out and get stuck in immediately.
Yeah.
Or this is a personal theory I have, that there's perhaps the next great sort of innovation in board games is a game that you can store back in the box that saves the play state in a certain way.
So it does exist to a certain extent in a couple of games that are card driven, like Time Stories.
Exactly what I was thinking of.
Or The Last Seventh Continent. But a minor state. It's limited right now to games where the components are very similar.
But it does help you get going from wherever you left off, or
exactly.
pick it up again. Yeah. Excellent. So that's...
Someday all board games, when they're so tidy, will be like the insides of Lords of Waterdeep. Yeah. That's the dream, guys. That's the dream.
Is that the...
Have you not...
That's the best in breed?
Had to deal with my ranting about Lords of Waterdeep. It's so beautiful inside. So everything should have inserts so that it's like that. So if it doesn't come with them, buy them or make them.
It's amazing. Its box is wrong. The outside of the box has a groove running around the side.
Yeah, the outside of the box is madness.
It is madness.
But the inside is a thing of beauty.
But on Lords of Waterdeep and for other board games as well, one of the things you can invest in is replacement tokens.
Oh, yeah.
So, for instance, Side, which is a very popular board game, you can get realistic tokens so that instead of having a yellow block for grain, you have a little bag of grain.
So we're not talking about replacing tokens you've chewed. We're talking about having premium tokens that are a step up.
Exactly. And they can often add to the experience, to the depth of the game, and even sometimes just to the visual ease at which you play, because you can see that, well, that is a bar of iron, so it is iron, rather than it's a black cube. Is that iron or was that coal?
Gotcha, yeah. And it presumably has a nice heft in the hand.
Exactly, and that sort of just adds to the immersion in the game.
Yeah, there's lots of companies doing those. There's companies doing them specifically designed for specific games, like the size tokens. And there's companies that do generic tokens. You can buy generic meeples You can buy any number of different types of meeples. You can buy sheep ones and cow ones and pig ones and Cthulhu ones and every kind of meeple you can imagine.
Meeples are those little
men,
fellows
yeah.
with arms and legs kind of stuck
people.
out like play school people.
Yeah, the little play school people. But you can buy them in all sorts of shapes and sizes for all
can't
different games, so that you've got your own selection of them. It's great, and it's one of these things that, like, yeah, it doesn't change the play of the game in any way, but it can make it more fun or more enjoyable. And for a lot of players, they're not something that they're necessarily going to justify buying for themselves, because, you know, you've got your €60 game and then you're like, oh, can I really justify spending 20 or 30 quid on a set of tokens for this game? Like, that seems crazy, but someone can buy it for you as a gift.
If it makes you happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably the best way to invest in the hobby, is to do something for yourself or someone else that really just ups the enjoyment of playing. Makes it a little bit more special. I think most of us and most of you who are listening can relate to the idea that it's nice to roll your own dice, or to have. I've heard all sorts of theories about having sort of specially curated dice for casting spells or for making social rolls, things like that. And that's just one of those.
I do like, there's a Kickstarter recently with a guy selling dice jails to put your dice in that roll badly.
The bad dice.
Yeah.
See, I
just thought, like, that doesn't add anything to anything, but I just thought that is cute. I like it. It's nice.
I think what we need is a dice guillotine that'll just chop the one off.
What's wrong with you? Ugh. Well, I am considering dice gel for the set of dice that I'm determined to use for our current D&D campaign, because they are trying to kill me, and they're doing very well. But I'm refusing to change dice, because, damn it, these are the dice I purchased for this campaign, so I'm going to use them. Whether it kills me or not, it's going to kill me. I've used a lot of fire for a lot of things, but not on the dice.
Keep a lighter handy just to wave under the really
threateningly.
The really recurrent ones. So those are kind of stocking stuffer ideas. There's a few more slightly big ticket items we could look at, especially in, say, the LARPing space, when we can get to. I mean, the way, obviously.
Is it possible to spend money if you're into LARP?
If any of our listeners want to buy amazing LARP things and join LARPing, you should. It's great, and it's a great excuse to buy unnecessary tat.
Well, here's an example then of something that's going to enhance your enjoyment, but I think more importantly is going to enhance the game for everybody. Because when you're LARPing, most of the time, especially in sort of the parlour LARPs that yourself, myself, Jude, would have played a lot of, it tends to be maybe a name badge or something else to denote who someone is. Occasionally people turn up in costume. But Mary, your stick, the wild outdoor LARPing, tends to involve an awful lot more costume. Mm-hmm. And that's a place where the better your costume is, the better it is for everybody.
Well, it's not even that that it has to be better as such. I mean, it's not reenactment. Nobody's expecting you to be dressed precisely like the peasant from the precise era. You know, there's dragons. None of this is real.
Are you an era-appropriate warlock?
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's all madness. But having made the effort, yeah, it does help people kind of get into the zone. So while something doesn't have to be good as such, like, things can be really quite terrible pieces of fabric and terrible items of clothes that I myself have used. It's just having made the effort and being distinctly not you going down to the supermarket on a regular Tuesday. That makes a difference to people.
And I presume as well, and I don't enjoy the outdoors, as we have established before, but I presume as well it helps other people in identifying you, you know, if you have particular pieces that they're used to
if you had
seeing,
15 people there in jeans and a black t-shirt, which is what happens at gaming conventions, it's much harder in a field while running at them with a sword to identify if it's friend or foe. Whereas if all your friends have, you know, red shirts on or something, everyone's going to die, then it's easier.
Not to mention, it really enhances the role playing if you actually have a satchel to dig around in while you're trying to distract someone.
Oh yeah, rolls the bandages if you're a healer.
You know, you've got sleeves on your robe to roll up to demonstrate that there's nothing there right before you fireball them.
Yep. Oh yeah, no, it does, and people can start quite basic. I think I've talked about this on here before.
You can go with dress-up box.
I mean, you can
with
go
a little bit of ingenuity.
Floofy loose pajama bottoms and a white shirt from Pennies or Primark or wherever is your budget clothing specialist.
My advice would be more belts than you think you need.
More belts than you could possibly imagine is good because real, in inverted commas, people don't wear that many belts, so you already look like something's gone strange. And then you can hang things off them, and every little thing that you hang off what you're wearing adds to your costume, whether you're hanging feathers off you or a little pouch or a rock on a string. You know, it's all just
that's the home dress up arrangement. I mean, can you spend any money on this
stuff? Well, you can, you see, because then you charm your friends and family and loved ones to buy you better versions of all those things as gifts, you see.
I have to ask, Mary, what is the most expensive piece of LARPing paraphernalia?
I spent €300 on a tent.
Tent. And this is like a period tent, is it?
Period-ish. It's a bell tent. You know, they're kind of the tent du jour for LARPers. Because they're sufficiently period looking while still, you know,
sufficiently watertight.
Having a floor.
But once you've got your costume and your tent sorted, Mary, I can't imagine you have any other thing to spend money on.
I don't know what you're talking about. So, I mean, if you're trying to buy gifts for people, you can buy fancy shirts. There's lots and lots of clothing and things, vendors online and on Facebook groups and stuff that make
LARP appropriate, LARP specific.
Kit. I mean, some of the big LARP games in the UK and around Europe and stuff would actually have quite strict rules about colours and fabrics and stuff that you use for particular races or particular species probably, and particular nationalities and stuff within game. So you go to people who are used to making stuff for that, kits for that game, and they'll get you something that's specifically for Empire or specifically for LT and stuff like that.
I see.
Which is quite cool. I'm just pretending that I'm not remembering that Jude asked the question because really he wants me to talk about all the unnecessary glamping equipment in my tent.
Well, it has been touched on in previous episodes, but yes, you've got quite a good setup. But would you say it enhances your game?
It enhances my game. It does actually enhance my game, partially because I have my tent in the in-character area, so people can come into it, and it's not period inside in any way. It's got modern bed and things like that, but you put throws over things and everything looks forgivable. Throw a few woolen blankets around and everything looks fine.
Excellent.
They're not wool. I can't afford woolen blankets. But it means you have a nice warm place to bring people in to have social time within game. And it means I am comfortable at night and warm at night so that when I get up the next morning, I don't feel like I'm 1,000 years old and I can actually enjoy myself. Because rolling out of a wet tent in the morning and then being expected to run around a field for 16 hours is really unpleasant.
It does definitely sound like an absolute enhancement. In every respect.
I mean, I am quite soft in my ways. There's plenty of people in the field with me who are rolling out of a tent that's only 2 feet off whose roof is 2 feet off the floor, and they seem to do just fine. They're very young and energetic. I have a full height camp bed. I have a selection of chairs, folding table, wardrobe. It folds.
You're not one to suffer
a chandelier.
When on campaign.
No. A chandelier with candles in it. Not real candles, because I would burn the place down. Mm-hmm. And my most amazingly ridiculous purchase ever, a toasted sandwich maker for a camp stove. So you can have toasted sandwiches in the field, which is the best thing ever.
Would this be a magical artifact that
it
creates
is greatly magical. Best
the setting
20 quid I've ever spent.
Yeah.
Sandwich toaster, yeah.
It's got a little dragon in it.
It in no way does, but it has lots of sandwiches in it.
On that sort of point, do LARPers tend to enhance their games with sort of potions and scrolls, things like that? Is there a lot of prop stuff?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what people are playing, you know, they'll have potion bottles, they'll have amulets and crystals on strings and stuff. A lot of it is DIY'd and handmade, but you can buy a lot of it too. There's great vendors online, like... trying to think of a single vendor like LARPin and Dine LARP and a few big German companies, particularly in the UK, that supply most of the LARPers in Europe, I think, with most of their purchased kit, making, you know, throwable rocks and things. They're nice and smooshy and LARP safe.
Aren't all rocks throwable?
Not LARP safe. But
the spell bolts and things like that as well.
Yeah, depending on the campaign, on the setting. So some need that, some don't. So yeah, this you can buy all that sort of stuff for people. So they can go from having their scroll that's just a piece of page they pulled out of a notebook at home to being a beautiful parchment scroll in a scroll case.
Yeah, don't drop it in the mud.
Yeah. Or, you know, a hip flask or a flat water bag thing. My brain has stopped. Skin, thank you.
Very good.
Oh my lordy. Different things like that again, they're not going to make the gameplay any different, but they'll help them enjoy it a bit more. They'll help them feel more in the setting.
Okay.
And weapons.
I'm
Buy them weapons.
Well, of course, Rubber LARP rubber sword LARP weapons.
Yeah.
Or, we could probably do an episode on all the different ones you can get hold of.
Yeah. The one thing is, it's probably, unless you actually know enough about them, they're not something you should buy for somebody without talking to them first, because different systems have different requirements.
Presumably, it's something you're going to go and buy for yourself when you're deep in the weeds and you need to hack your way out.
Yeah, but if there's a LARPer in your life who you know can't afford to drop 70 or 80 quid on a sword, but they go and they play and they have to borrow a sword every time, and they love the game, but they're a student or whatever, so they can't afford it.
This would be a nice way of...
You could offer to pay, or offer to have, the whole family will chip in a tenner each and get it for you for Christmas or something.
Good. Well, let's return to the indoors then, having braved or glamped our way through the wild.
Back to where Jude is hiding indoors.
We touched briefly on board games. Are there any other things you can think about that we can use to enhance the board game experience?
Board gaming in particular, or tabletop gaming?
Oh, let's move on to tabletop. Yeah, I think we covered most of board gaming already. So, are there any things you can think of that help to enhance the tabletop experience beyond pencils and paper and the beyond pencils and papers and the fertile fields of our imagination?
Well, absolutely. I mean, other than the rule book, and the set of dice, people don't really need anything else to play role-playing games, and that's the way it should be. It can be a very purist thing in that regard. Theater of the mind. It's as enjoyable as ever.
Yes, for some kind of peasant. Well, that's not really what we want to. We want to
no peasant
have a much
here.
more refined experience. We don't want the baked beans of tabletop gaming. We want the caviar of tabletop gaming.
We want the glitter.
And there are a few ways we can enhance our experience.
I don't know if Jude would have any ideas for this.
This is not my area of expertise. No, absolutely. There's lots of ways that you can enhance everybody's play when you're playing role-play games, and some of them are very common. Miniatures. Miniatures can be picked up, specific miniatures for your game D&D or Starfinder, or even just generic fantasy miniatures or sci-fi, depending what you're playing. And they do give some level of depth when your players can identify with what monster they're attacking and what characters they're playing, and it does add that little bit of sort of pizzazz.
I know there are some groups that are very into having the specific representation of both the PCs and the monsters they fight. And it does help. It really does help to sort of be able to look quickly at a battlefield and go, oh, those are the dire wolves, and those are the goblins, and that's the shaman at the back. I know he's a shaman. He's got a big rattly stick. And of course, if you're going to have miniatures on the table, you probably want something for them to stand on, bar a few piled up books and some crunched up paper.
Yeah, absolutely. and you can, again, here you can go for something relatively cheap. You can go for your gridded paper. You can go for a blank gridded paper that you draw on, and that's
a battle mat. A battle mat with dry erase is probably a really good start for almost anybody.
Absolutely.
And to just expand on that slightly, I would say that I used to think dry erase markers came in red, black, and blue.
I know, right? Because they're the only colours we ever saw.
And then I discovered that you can get them in almost any colour in the rainbow. And if you've got even the slightest inkling of artistic talent, what you can do for your tabletop game with just a dry erase mat and a collection of these markers, you're going to wow your players almost instantly. And again, the lava is orange and the obsidian stones are black and grey, and you can really go to town on it. And of course, someone will put their elbow on it and
smudge it. Rock falls, character dies.
I think that's a very easy, simple, and cheap way to start enhancing your tabletop game.
Absolutely, and then there's elevation from that point. I mean, even just moving slightly forward, you can get the pre-printed battle mats from people from Pathfinder or D&D.
Loads of those, yeah.
Or I have to give a shout out to Big Book of Battle Mats, which is an amazing book with pre-printed terrains that folds out to quite a large area on your board.
I missed out on it.
They are available commercially.
Or are they now? Because the Kickstarter was successful.
Yes. So
this is a great big storybook. It almost, you'd feel like a 5-year-old presented with an enormous tome. But every single one of these maps, folks, is generic but not dull. They all have a story that they're telling, and they just suggest interesting ways of playing out a scene.
Yeah, and they've recently produced the little books of dungeons, which are 2 books that can be placed together in up to 8 different conformations per page, allowing you to have like an endless amount of.
They're
range.
ring bound, aren't they?
They're ring bound,
So they lie flat. Perfect. Which is
That
important.
is important. That is important. Having a mat with a big kink in it so
Yeah,
everything falls over
you
is
don't want
frustrating.
to. You don't want to be fighting with it as you try and use it. So yeah, there's like, it's an unusual format. I'm not sure where you're going to put it on your shelf, but
I think
the
it is your
sheer
shelf at a certain point.
the sheer sort of number of different encounters you're going to be able to run just with a simple product like that, I think is a great way of kind of kicking your game up. Now, generic maps are fine, but you're going to sometimes run into very specific circumstances that you want to represent. Would it be fair to say, Jude, that you and I are in the grips of a sort of a tabletop terrain making addiction,
I think
Affliction.
love affair?
I think that would be correct in all regards.
You made a significant investment into your tabletop with Herstarts, didn't you?
I bought Herstarts Castle Molds, and I saved up for quite a while because they're a US company, shipping is quite expensive, and you save a great deal by buying a lot together, both in shipping and they give you a reduction for buying multiples. So I purchased a good number of them. These are silicone molds that you fill with plaster. You can use resin, although resin is quite tough on silicone, so you will wear out your mold with resin. And basically, you use them to cast plaster bricks, which you can assemble into any number of variety of things. So I have I have been casting a lot.
Sounds simple.
It does sound simple.
They are differently shaped bricks. It's not just a whole bunch of square bricks. There's like weird shapes of barrels and all sorts of cool
there's
things.
fantastic
Some of them are
stuff that
very
comes
cute.
out of it.
So I have a whole variety. So I've finished building a bridge, which is like 15 inches across, about 60 inches wide. And because of the way that the bases are, they're perfectly exactly 1 inch squares to fit in with tabletop gaming.
Perfect for
and
tabletop,
D&D
yeah.
and that sort of stuff. And I'm currently building 2 towers, and I have a dungeon tile set for water caverns, and the aim is to make the game that sort of extra pop for particular settings, you know. So coming up, and spoiler to the players of my campaign,
I'm just going to put my fingers in my ears.
there is a particular tower, and that's why I'm sort of building that piece. And there's a bit of an accent to it that I won't spoil here, but so I wanted to be a showpiece for my game.
Yeah.
And I feel that like I could have it on a map, I could draw it, it would functionally work.
This is going to stick in their minds forever, though,
Exactly.
isn't it?
This is something to take a picture
He's
of.
going to be so
with your game
offended
group.
if it doesn't.
I'm going to beat you with the tower.
Dumb tower.
What tower? I don't remember a tower.
Well, this is, I mean, I suppose this is where the enhancement of a game isn't so much exclusively about the money that's being spent as much as the time and thought that goes into it.
And counter space.
Oh, is this taking up space?
So it was for any of our listeners that aren't aware or who weren't listening to the last episode that Jude spotted on. Jude is my significant other, so Jude's casting space is also my space. And previously to now, all available space in our house has been full of crafting materials from my making LARP things, and now it is all full of tiny pieces of plaster. Tiny pieces of plaster, folks.
They're airing
everywhere.
out. They're
Everywhere.
drying.
Even our oven has tiny pieces of plaster in it. They are on every surface in the house.
I'm pretty sure the dog and cat have tiny pieces of plaster on that stage.
They 100% do. They're everywhere.
So this is quite the effort to build up a collection that's going to last you for
You need patient
years.
housemates
Yes.
for the period while you are casting a lot.
Absolutely, and then there is effort, and this is what, as you're saying, we move into sort of you spent money, but this is putting time and effort into making something that you think will enhance your game or enhance the game for others, showpieces, and ideally, pieces that you can reuse from campaign to campaign or spill over into your, wargaming into 40k, AOS.
Oh, is this how you justify?
Ah, the lies we tell
See,
ourselves.
it counts for multiple games, so I really am spending much less money.
Does it make you happy?
It does, in between bouts of frustration, when bricks don't cast properly or...
And the
You're
cat
lear-
knocks them.
Or the dog
you're
digs
learning
through
all
the
the time.
plaster.
Oh, really?
Yeah, literally.
Oh yeah, the dog found the box of plaster
Oh, no.
bags of plaster the other day.
I'll
That
see
was
all the
fun.
hairs will have to reinforce those
Well,
pieces.
it's the fact that the plaster is now in the dog's fur. So that
Oh, no.
You have to have a bath, a really
Can't be
quick
allowed
bath.
out, yeah. But it is pleasant to sort of see these things come together and eventually to unveil them. And for my own part, I make an awful lot of things out of stuff I find. And awful for
And
sort of hoarding
are
stuff.
impressively good at it, I would say.
But it just means that every time I go outside now, sort of root around and, there's an interesting bit of stone or a bit of bark I could use, or, I'll take those inside and I'll turn them into something or other. The recycling bin gets raided every so often as well.
And it's true, because you don't have to spend a lot of money on expensive equipment to make... You don't have to. You
don't
can.
have to. You might invest in a few tools here and there.
To make a few bits and pieces to add a little bit of set dressing to your campaigns. Like when Fado many years ago for the first Itzicon in Galway, I made some scenery for the wargaming room. So there would be stuff, and I had essentially no money, and I had absolutely no tools. I had never done any crafting at that point, but I went out like that. I got sticks, I got bits of twigs, I got bits of pampas grass and feathers and things, jammed them into bits of Play-Doh and painted them the colours I wanted, and they looked like trees. I begged, borrowed and stole pieces of insulation foam from houses that were getting repair work done on them and building work done on them, and carved them with knives into little hills and things like that, and put a bit of flock or paint the green.
That's how it starts.
It can work, you know.
Absolutely. I think actually I've just hit upon what might be the sort of the mascot for this episode in terms of it's a good stocking stuffer, and it probably bridges the LARP and tabletop scenery worlds.
Is it a wodge of cash?
It certainly wouldn't hurt, but I think you can't spend any better money if you want to enhance your hobby with something that you might make yourself than getting yourself even a semi-decent hot glue gun.
Oh, yeah.
That can be used for... I've seen people put together entire costumes with them who can't sew. They just stick them all together.
Yeah, why not?
Anyone who watches RuPaul's Drag Race will be familiar with this technique in making dresses. But it's equally applicable for putting together armoured headpiece or just some maybe a wicker charm that you'll hang in the tree outside your tent. And then, of course, it's fantastic for bodging together any amount of scenery on the fly. Especially if you've got a sharp knife and some cardboard or foam that you can hack away at to get a very quick and dirty sort of balustrade battlement
yes,
or anything else you might a few sort of cartoony looking trees for an evening's entertainment.
And this is something worth looking into too. Is that, you know, if you do want to buy something to help your loved one get more enjoyment or to add a little bit extra to their gaming life, and you know that what they want to start doing is DIYing stuff, you don't have to be buying them the things. You can help them buy the tools to get there.
To make their own things, yeah.
I mean, I have been known to ask for a new scissors as a gift, you know, because fabric scissors, to get good ones, that's a lot of money, you know. So yeah, scissors, cutters, you can get fancy hot wire cutters, cutting boards, get a cutting mat. If you are going to do any DIYing, or if somebody that you care about or who uses a table that you care about
very good point,
is planning on doing any DIYing for games or anything really, get them a cutting mat. You can get massive A1 sized ones, you can get teeny weeny little A5 ones, but they're self-healing, they're awesome. They've got measurements on them, you can plonk your plaster on them, you can plonk your hot glue on them, you can cut them, you can do all sorts of stuff. All your hobby shops, art and supply shops, even some fabric shops will have them. Yeah,
get the cheapest one you can and abuse the hell out of it, and you'll never regret it.
I've never really seen a huge variety in the prices between them anyway, to be honest. They seem to be reasonably standard between most places. But they're great.
Yes, so that's, I mean, okay, there's a lot to be said for making your own. But if you really want to indulge / enhance your hobby, there's nothing like technology to really up the game. So we'll sort of we'll touch on a few things that perhaps we don't have any direct experience of, but we can certainly see how they might enhance a game. The first one, of course, being a 3D printer. Now, 3D printers have come a long way since...
Absolutely, both in their
whenever
technology and their price, and the price is the key thing.
It's dropping like a stone.
They've become affordable. I mean, you can get a 3D printer for as cheap as 150 quid. I mean, it might not be the best in market, but depending on what you're using for, it can get the job done. Yeah,
and it's important now that we're seeing a second wave of 3D printers that are using fluid medium and lasers, lithographic printing. I think it's stereolithographic printing, I believe is the correct term.
Sure, why not?
And it's a magic process that makes solid objects appear out of gunk. Very, very toxic gunk, so don't get in it on your clothes or skin or anything like that.
Or in your children.
But they have become almost as cheap as the filament printers, and it's just leading to this revolution in terms of model printing, and people are printing all sorts of things. Terrain, dice towers are particularly popular.
And then again, going back to board game tokens, and people print their own particular tokens for games, or meeples with their, in the vein of their characters, that sort of thing, so
life counters, you name it.
Yeah.
There's also things to be manufactured out of a 3D printer.
I've seen some great deck boxes actually made.
Oh, nice one, yeah.
That really help your deck stand out, I guess.
And you could have sort of a slot in there for the specialist tokens you've printed to represent.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on the game, it can be hard to get a deck box the right size.
Yeah, 3D printing technology is just going to continue to get better and better. There's talk now of printer heads that can deposit up to 8 different materials. So I'm not sure what application might have in gaming, but maybe one day your miniature will light up or make a noise.
Dance across the table. Give it Bluetooth. Everything's better with Bluetooth.
Well, very funny you should mention tables, because the last 2 items on my list are sort of more or less about the table you play on. If you can enhance the table itself, then maybe the whole game gets better. I think there was a bit of a fad, a bit of a mania for bespoke gaming tables about 3 or 4 years ago.
They're the dream.
I think certain shows like Critical Role and stuff that use them have definitely helped heighten their popularity. They are an expensive investment, but when you have something solid that is the right size for your games, it's got the nooks and crannies for your drinks, for your pieces.
Yeah,
it's just
your drink isn't sitting on the battle mat.
It's just a piece that's going to pay for itself in every game you play. Just a standard, and we're not even talking about anything with technology infused at this stage.
Yeah.
We're talking about standard. And so you have companies now that, like Geek & Son, who just make these tables.
And these tend to have a sunken pit in the middle, or an area that would have a space for neoprene mat or for felt or something. As you say, Mary, there'll be drink holders. There's often shelves that drop down so you can keep your character sheets.
Yeah, places to hide your dice and stuff like that. I mean, they're so beautiful. You need a lot of space, and they are expensive.
Yeah.
And there is one company as well providing table toppers.
Okay.
So basically like a sunken table top that affixes to a table you already have.
Oh, so you can just take your dining room table and put this on top.
Exactly.
And you've got your bespoke gaming table. A bit like the poker tables that were
very much
popular.
so, yes. And a little bit more expensive.
But this is, once you're into it, this is what we're talking about. Yeah. So the next level up that I know of, there might be a level beyond that, I'm not sure, is I think probably the last thing we'll talk about in terms of enhancing your game, and this really is
like
the
something.
lifestyle gamer, and quite possibly the lifestyle gamer / homeowner who's just got absolutely everything else they could possibly need.
Yeah, what to get the gamer who has everything.
Which is the TV tabletop that have become, as much like 3D printers, the price of flat screen TVs has dropped. And that has opened up some interesting possibilities. Now, these started out as DIY projects, but I feel increasingly there's going to be a market for things like this.
We're already seeing some of the bigger manufacturers tables start to offer, options for the cavity to be built in, or for inclusion if you pay the extra for the TV or whatever.
And this is essentially an LCD or OLED screen, maybe 40 inches, 50 inches, that you can use to display a map or anything else you can think of once you hook up a laptop.
Usually with a layer of glass or something over it for a little bit of protection.
Take a bit of scuffing.
A little bit, but not a huge amount. And then, you roll your dice on top of a TV. It's insane.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned earlier with the battle mats, I mean, obviously you now can just change your battle mat at the click of a button.
Have it scroll.
Exactly. And you can have special effects. You can have...
Fog of War.
Exactly, Fog of War. You can have wind rustle through the trees that are on the...
Very nice.
Or a bird fly across the game table,
So in conjunction with that, I'd often use sound effects, like ambient stuff. So once you've got that, and you can see the trees moving, or you can see the lights flickering in a dungeon, take me away. It's a gaming heaven.
And again, just while you mention sound effects, just touch upon like apps like Syrinscape, which provide a variety of sounds and music.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, just buy little packages.
You can buy little packages. They offer a number free when you sign up for them, but you can buy little packages, and you can buy specific like D&D modules. You can buy like Water Heist sound package. And And just that noise can help. That little ambient noise can help immerse the game.
Just the right thing.
Sounds, yeah.
There's a difference between a quiet pub and a pub where it's a full riot going on, and it can really help to sell a scene to players.
Exactly. In a recent game, I had put my Bluetooth speaker. I have a MDF tower, and I put my Bluetooth speaker in the tower, and I had church bells ringing from it.
Oh, brilliant! This is a tower you had on the table.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a laser cut tower.
Yeah, it's a laser cut MDF
Very
tower.
good. So the bells were coming from inside.
From the
church,
bell tower, yeah.
Fantastic.
It drove the players mad though, because the idea was that the bells are meant to be ringing non-stop.
Right.
But the players sitting right beside it were...
Sorry, what? I can't. It's bells.
The bells.
Well, these have been some great examples. I think there's a couple of things I'm going to go away and maybe write a letter to Gaming Santa and say,
Dear Gaming Santa, can I have a telly table?
I've been relatively good this year. And my players deserve it.
Well, that's a good way to sell it. Yeah, your players deserve it.
I'm thinking of everybody. But I hope, if this is going out at the start of December, I hope all of you are gearing up for a great gaming Christmas, and maybe there's something here you can treat yourselves with or enhance someone else's gaming experience and give them the gift of a slightly better game next year. Now, of course, the year isn't entirely out for us, the Adventuring Party. We have high hopes to continue some traditions as we close out the year. You'll just have to stay tuned to find out more. Mary?
Yeah, that's it for now. This party's over.
For listening to the Adventuring Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at our website, theadventuringparty.net, and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there or on Twitter through @adventuringpty. Hosts can be contacted by email at party@theadventuringparty.net or directly at savage or mary @theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.
At least no one's singing.
The wild. I mean, that could change.
I know.
So maybe I could rap. Maybe I could yodel. Can I yodel?
Can you yodel is the question.
I don't know. How does one yodel?
It's
See,
about
you
changing
just
head
sound
voice.
like-
No, it's head voice.
Head voice.
It's head voice to chest voice. That's how you
Is
yodel.
he making things up?
No.
He sounds like an ad for Alpen. which you would think would mean he's yodeling, but probably means what he's doing is not yodeling at all.
Yodel.
Yodel, yodel, yodel. We're so cool.
I'm going to string all this together at the end.
When
Okay.
good gaming goes bad.